And if you believe the Skeezix Dilemma truly is going belly up while listening to Trout Mask Replica, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. Dude, what's up?
I don't even know what half the words you just said were.
I mean, they could be the greatest album ever released, or they could not be. Fortunately for me, we don't have to talk about any of those bands this week.
Yeah, this week we wanted to talk about Embodyment.
Really? I thought we were talking about Saint Anger.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Really? I mean...
We did that already.
But I want to talk about it again.
I don't want to.
Come on, it won't be that bad this time,
No.
I promise.
No.
Oh, come on.
Turn that shit off.
Okay. I had to try to get it in there. So, Embodiment.
Embodyment.
Like, seriously? Embodiment?
So, we have this tendency to talk about bands that don't end up sounding at the end of their career at all how they sounded at the beginning. For some reason, that's just something that happens a lot in heavy music. And Embodyment is a really, really good example of that dynamic of, hey guys, we tried this one thing, it worked really well for us, let's do something different.
I know that they started in 1992.
Yes.
We didn't really get a release from them, at least an official one, until 1996 with Embrace the Eternal.
Was that 96? I thought it was 98.
Oh, that was 98, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then that made its way all the way
It's too heavy for 96.
Right, I know. And then the last album that we got from them was Songs for the Living in 2002.
Right.
So he had about a 10-year career, officially 4 full-length releases with an EP that came out in 2011. But
yeah, I don't know anything about that, but that was news to me.
And we're gonna span the globe as far as sound goes, because we go everywhere from extreme to hardcore, metalcore. And we make a stop at nu metal, and then dance around with some rock for a few songs.
Right. So I mean, Embrace the Eternal was super heavy. The band actually had existed before that, and I don't know, I guess in the mid '90s, 1993 to 1996 was the name of a compilation that they had released that basically had all their old demos on it.
Their original name was Supplication.
Yeah. I don't know how long they went with that name or not. I think Embodiment sounds cooler in my personal opinion, but their old stuff, I mean, their pre-Embrace the Eternal stuff was really more heavily rooted in just straight up death metal than later on. A lot of the songs on that 1993 to 1996 release, very heavy, actually more brutal versions than some of the songs that would end up on Embrace the Eternal.
To give you a idea of the difference in the band's sounds, we actually discovered this band in 2001 after they had already broken up. Or I guess that would have been 2002.
It was close.
But the album that we found was Hold Your Breath.
Yeah, we found it in a record store, yeah.
We put it in, we press play, and we get, belly up.
Buddy actually gave me his copy of Hold Your Breath because he was so pissed off about how,
Because it wasn't the narrow scope of things?
It didn't sound like Embrace the Eternal at all. So, yeah, he wasn't a big fan of that. And any of you guys that have heard Buddy on previous episodes, he doesn't like that when a band changes that dramatically. Although it wasn't so much of a dramatic change as we'll find out. I mean, they pretty much blasted onto the scene with Embrace the Eternal, which came out on Solid State Records in 1998, which was a really good year for those types of bands. I mean, you'd had like Living Sacrifices Reborn had come out a year before that, and Zao was up and coming with their more recognizable lineup at this time. And so this band Embodiment, was completely out of left field. It was almost like you had the heaviness of Living Sacrifice with the snarling, snake-like Zao vocals. Although, again, not really being a ripoff of those bands, they were doing their own original thing. And so what you have on Embrace the Eternal is a very crushing, brutal metalcore record that has heavy influences in death metal. It is unrelenting, to say the least.
Before we go any further, I'm going to be unrelenting and say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, you can find everything we do at discussmetal.com. We are on Google Play. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. We are on TuneIn Radio. So if you have an Amazon Echo product, you can say to it, Alexa, play the latest episode of Discography Discussion, and she will. You can also find everything we do on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and it lets us know that you're listening. You know, we want to hear from you guys. You can send an email to us anytime at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can tweet at us. You can talk to us on Facebook. You know, one thing about iTunes and Stitcher is we don't really get feedback from those services. We get the feedback from you guys. So if you can leave us a 5-star or whatever, however you'd like to review us, and leave us a review, we'd appreciate that, because it would let us know you're listening and let us know what you want to hear. 20 tongues.
20 tongues.
I must have had 20 tongues to get through that whole thing in 3 breaths.
Scary. 20 Tongues is a scary song. The whole record is scary.
It starts off, I kind of get tricked out because my initial feeling when I listen to this record is I think I'm about to get some, Korn Life is Peachy, like Adidas action.
Yeah, you don't.
And I don't get that at all.
No.
I don't get that at all.
You get beat over the head while you're not looking. It's scary. I mean, the cover artwork is scary. It's got like this guy screaming with these like 2 kids' heads in his hand, and I don't know what exactly is going on there. And it is really scary. You pop the CD open, and there's it's like a purple CD, right? But it's got like images of like spinal cord on it and stuff. It's pretty terrifying, and it sounds like it looks. It is unrelenting. It is brutal. The vocals are sick. The drumming is completely out of this world. There's time changes in here. There's this flow to the songs that really keeps the whole thing going.
A good level of straight ahead double bass.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really hear this type of quality out of bands now, I don't think. I mean, this is gimmick-free metal. It only has to justify what it is. I think it really punches in all the right places. This is not melodic, like really at all. I can't think of like any melodic moments on Embrace the Eternal at all. I mean, you're getting just like we had said about the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza. It's kind of like an audible assault.
Straight ahead.
Yeah, it's straight ahead. It's unrelenting. It's like I hate to use this analogy again, but it is like pushing a boulder up a hill. It's almost work to get through it, But this isn't a bad thing. Like I don't have any issues with it not being melodic at all. It's loud. It's great to listen to when I'm pissed off. It just really the vocals are just very aggressive, just angry sounding. Whereas there's a lot of bands that scream, or they do the Zao thing and they do like the growl. But with Embodiment, Chris McCadden's vocals are just so sick. Like it really is like a Zao with a deeper register.
I know when I think of Embodiment and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to listen to today, I don't reach for Embrace the Eternal first. But
that's where you're wrong.
It is definitely on the list of, okay, I just got 4 things dropped in my lap. I have 10 minutes to get this done. All right. And I'm going to reach for Embodiment, and I'm going to put on Strength, or I'm going to put on Blinded, and I'm just going to let it go.
Yep.
I'm not looking at the clock. I'm just, all right, here's the Assault.
Yeah, Bruce Fitzhugh from Living Sacrifice does guest vocals on Religious Infamy.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear him on there. Especially because Living Sacrifice was so hot then, you know. I mean, it was like...
I was about to ask you, was Living Sacrifice, like, were they hanging out with everybody at this point?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, like, Solid State goes, and we'll talk about that whenever we do a Living Sacrifice episode at some point, but essentially, I mean, they were very instrumental in kind of pushing Tooth and Nail and Solid State Records in this direction, you know, because, like, Tooth and Nail and Solid State for me were always just, like they put out hardcore bands, you know,
Project 86.
Well, not even like that, but like
I'm not saying hardcore. I'm saying you had those.
Yeah, like
that was the scope of acts that you had. It was rock with heavy vocals, or it was hardcore.
Right. Yeah, on the harder edge of things. They did a lot of like punk and indie bands and stuff too. So like this whole metal thing that was going on in like 97 through 99 for Solid State is really what made it an important label to me. And I mean, Embrace the Eternal just delivers the goods, man. Like you hear Blood and Fire, you hear Reborn, and you're just like, man, I just can't think of 2 better records than that. And then you get Embrace the Eternal, and oh wow, holy shit, I've got 3 now. So they were huge, and really this was big for like Christian metal too, because like it was one of those things where, you know, Christian metal, I think really at this point, I mean, there had been heavy bands, you know, there was Mortification and that did death metal before that, and like Vengeance Rising and that sort of stuff. But it seemed like for a while there, like Christian heavy music, at least for me, was, again, it was hardcore. You know, it was like your Strong Arm and Focused and Overcome and bands like that. So when Living Sacrifice put out Reborn, I think it completely changed the game. And, you know, Zao with Blood and Fire at the same time really opened up the doors for a band like Embodyment getting picked up by a label. Because, I mean, they'd been doing it for years.
It's almost like Embodyment was the group... here I go again with the comparison to... it's the Mushroom Head Slipknot effect. They were around this whole time.
Right.
Nobody noticed for some reason.
Yeah, they just weren't on that level yet.
It's almost like after they found Living Sacrifice and they found Zao, then everybody said, well, what else is there like this? Oh, there's this band called Embodyment. They had been doing it just as long.
Right. They'd been doing it for a long time at that point.
And you know, to be fair, if you can find the 93 to 96 album, which is mostly comprised of demos, it's not that great. But you can hear what had been going on this whole time.
Right, and there were actually, and this is all stuff I read on message boards years later, so take it with a grain of salt, but basically, there were people that were actually pissed, like I guess old Embodiment fans, that they said that, you know, they were actually mad that that Embrace the Eternal wasn't more death metal, you know, like it was, that they had hardcored it up, you know, a little bit, and I just found that very interesting because I can't, like, as a death metal fan myself, I don't really hear these songs like being dumbed down in any way, shape, or form. I mean, they're just so over the top. I mean, there's nothing on this record that I think, as a death metal fan, that I'm like, oh, this is soft or this is core. I mean, I guess it's a little bit more like metalcore with the breakdowns and all that, but like for me, it's not a problem. It just adds to it, and you know, yeah, maybe this was more of like okay, it's the late 90s, people really aren't really so much into death metal anymore, so we're gonna go with this more, you know, moshy sound. But there are people that shit on it, you know, from day one, which is just mind blowing. Whenever you look at how rock solid of a debut record it really is.
But I'm gonna say it again, I have to eat too, and this is kind of what was going at the time, and either they cashed in or this is just where the creative brain went.
Well, my understanding is that nobody in this scene cashed in at any given point.
Exactly.
This was an uphill battle for everyone involved.
So, for historical sake, this is the second sound of Embodiment because they would change again and again, throughout their 10-year career.
Right. So,
but the narrow scope of things were not that far away from where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, the narrow scope of things is different in that, like, well, it doesn't sound like Embrace the Eternal. There's really no other way to really say it. It is more of like a hard rock. I would almost call it new metal. I'm not 100% sold on that as a descriptor for it, but
wait till Hold Your Breath for.
I don't think it's new metal on that either. But I don't know. I tend to not call bands that I like new metal, but so the narrow scope of things is almost. I mean, really in your mind, you have to almost say that it's a completely different band. Now, it's the same guys, minus the singer. And they have now hired a new guy named Sean, who has a much better voice for singing. So they do it a lot. There's a lot of singing. Very melodic. I mean, he sounds good. He actually even screams a little bit on the narrow scope of things. And it's weird, too, because these being more like kind of downtrodden melodic rock songs. I mean, they had a much darker edge. They were more negative, I guess, sounding. But his voice sounds so good when he's singing that it's weird whenever you get to a song like Assembly Line Humans and he's screaming the whole time. It doesn't really sound good. Like his voice doesn't really sound that great for screaming. It sounds really forced. I can't help but see that as maybe the people that liked Embrace the Eternal will like these couple of songs that are
right.
That are heavier, but they're not even. I mean, they're not even on the same planet as far as heaviness goes. And I'm saying all this stuff like it's a bad thing. And initially as a fan, I could see myself being pretty disappointed with this. However, I had heard this before I had heard Embrace the Eternal, so
we kind of worked backwards with this band.
Yeah, so it really kind of. For me at least, I didn't see it, as being that different than their later records. Like, before I heard Embrace the Eternal, this was the heavy one, And, yeah, I mean, the screaming, while passable, doesn't really sound that great in a hardcore, metalcore context. But I don't think that's what they were going for here.
Embodiment across the board is a band that I enjoy, but it's not a band that I would personally put on any pedestal and say, you haven't heard Embodiment? You need to hear Embodiment. Now, there are those times, and there are those people that, that would say to me, oh, there's no good hardcore or heavy bands that were on Solid State or Tooth and Nail other than Zao or Living Sacrifice. There aren't any. Okay, well, have you heard Embodiment? That might be the time I bring it up.
Right.
But I can't label it generic because it's not.
No.
I can say that the best you're going to get out of me, at least on this album, is it's not really anything special, but it's good. It's not bad. It's not subpar. It's not that they're making it up as they go. It's just straightforward, straight ahead, heavy. It just happens to be that the guy sings a few times on this record. I like it.
A few times?
More than a few, I guess.
Pretty much the whole time. I would say that the screaming-singing ratio is somewhere around like 80-20 here. And I don't think it sounds bad. And I think it's hard, too, because, like, you can't, like... I guess it's one of those weird situations where it's like, could you imagine if Zao put out Liberate and it sounded like this? Like, right after Blood and Fire?
I can't imagine Zao Liberate sounding like anything other than Liberate.
Right. Or, like, if Living Sacrifice had gone in this direction afterwards. Like, it's such a jarring change that the question arises, again, we say this all the time. Why not change the band name?
We already did that. It used to be called Supplication.
Right, I get that. But, like, this is something else completely, and it's coming out on the same label. And that label has to market this now. Like, yeah, do you like Embodiment? Well, you may not like this.
Well, tell me this. When POD got a new guitarist, was it still POD?
Yeah, Jason Truby from Living Sacrifice.
Well, right?
It's worth throwing out there.
Was it the same band?
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, POD's sound didn't fundamentally change, though.
But
it's not like they pulled Jason Truby in from Living Sacrifice and POD started to sound like Living Sacrifice.
Because if they had, we'd be having a whole different conversation.
that would be awesome, but it just wasn't. Probably would have sounded bad actually. But,
so, is there a difference between a band that has been around long enough or confident enough to say, "This is our sound. We need you to fit our sound," and what this most likely is, which is we got a new vocalist. Okay, you can scream our old stuff, but you like to sing, so we're going to kind of write to the vocalist.
Well, my understanding is that they didn't really... I think in the very beginning they played a few Embrace songs at shows, but I think once they put this out, it was pretty much just this. Because again, how do you morph this singer into the old sound? You can't.
Not for my money.
Not really. I mean, it would have sounded weird, It may not have been that noticeable live, but the difference in screaming was very noticeable. And
so is this another Norma Jean situation where as much as you want to hold on to Embrace the Eternal as Embodiment, you kind of have to let go and say, look, guys, it was one record.
Kind of, yeah. And
this moving forward is what you're going to get when you listen to Embodiment. So this is Embodiment.
Right. And yeah, I mean, Sean, again, he kind of is Embodiment as far as what you're going to get from there on out. I mean... Embrace was great, and I think with the band, because like we had mentioned with Embrace the Eternal that it was unmelodic, it was unrelenting, it was all the other adjectives we used to describe it, but it was predominantly just heavy, not melodic. And keep in mind, this is a band that has been around since like '93, so like 5 years later they put out Embrace,
right?
And then they toured on Embrace for 2 years, and then they put out. Narrow scope of things. So it kind of makes sense that maybe after 7 years of just being brutal all the time, the thing about musicians and as an asshole lead singer, the thing that sucks about musicians sometimes is that they don't like just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And
it gets to a point where either it starts to be not fun for some people, or you lose sight of what the actual goal is. I've been playing music now for 15 years that I would consider myself being involved in music projects. And same goes for you.
Right.
So I feel like I'm at the point now where I can at least say I have fun creating something, but I'm not put off when I have to start working on it and putting effort into it. And
right.
A lot of people are, because they treat it like every fairy tale fantasy in some way. It's supposed to be fun all the time. Well, I like going to work, but some days I just have to go.
Right.
And I like writing music, and I like creating new music, but I also like just saying, okay, play it again until it's right. And a lot of people can't do that. And sometimes it is fun to just step away from exactly what you're presenting and do other things. That's why a lot of bands do side projects. But Embodiment is just an example, at least to my eyes, of, okay, we did this for almost 8 years and lead singer leaves or is replaced. I don't know which one.
According to a podcast, I think he was replaced.
So either they had a new sound in mind, or they just didn't want to do the same thing over and over and over again anymore.
I think they had a new sound in mind, like collectively, the musicians. I think the singer wasn't on board. I think that there was some issue with that.
Having dealt with that situation several times, I can tell you it is not fun when your vocalist doesn't want to go the same direction as you do.
I hear you, bro.
I know, right? So, couple more years. Officially one, but a couple more years.
Right, so...
And the band puts out Hold Your Breath, which, for myself, was the first thing I heard when I heard Embodiment. Starts off with a song called Yours Truly. And I was in at the 3-second mark. Nothing about it like stands out and kicks me, but you know, we talked about nu metal with Josh Toomey, and I did say that Third Strike was my favorite, you know, nu metal band. Just pure. This starts off and puts me in the same mood. It's a combination of all the things I love that go into it. It just sounds good. If you gave me this on a piece of paper and said, Joe, we're playing this tonight, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, it's melodic rock. Very smooth, melodic guitar tone, nothing crunchy, really. I mean, it punches a little bit, but it's not, you know, the goal is not to be heavy. And so what you get here is you have really smooth vocals. Sean's singing is actually better on this record than it was on the Narrow Scope of Things, which makes sense. Everyone gets better with time. And he sounded a lot better on this. And really, I mean, this record, see, I'm a little bit opposite from Joe in that, like, I get what he's saying about nothing really standing out on it. I really enjoyed maybe the first 4 or 5 songs on this record, and then eventually everything kind of just starts sounding the same for me. And it's not that it's bad. Like,
unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it's bad or anything, but it just kind of exists. And you know, I'm not gonna turn it off if it comes on the radio. You know, not that it's on the radio, but
I have a scale that exists in my head of whether or not I should listen to a band more. And when I talk about a band like this, that it's nothing special. It just is what it is, and it's appealing. It's not meant to be mean or cruel. It's, in my head, there's a scale. It goes like this. It's at the very bottom we have Crossfade.
At the very bottom.
If you've never heard Crossfade, good. Continue to not listen to them, because that was a band that I saw their CD in the store, and back me up, Dan. 6 years. We walked down, you know, either it was Best Buy or it was Target, or we were at Virgin or Sam Goody.
We're starting to sound old, dude.
I know, but I'm okay with it. I'm just 6 years. We walked down the aisles looking at albums, and I see this thing called Crossfade, and it was only $6, and I said, you know, I'm still not going to buy it today. Years later, I finally listened to it. I'm glad I dodged that bullet. That's the bottom of my scale.
Well, I mean,
top of my scale changes depending on which style of music you're talking about, but Embodiment's right there in the middle. They're sitting right there in the middle of it's good, it's not great, it's not bad. A lot of it I don't remember later, but some of it I do, and that's good enough for me.
Well, I think they're good at playing rock. I think they're good at this style. I just don't think that their sound with this style of music is as compelling as it was on Embrace the Eternal. And I know, like, I'm being that guy because, you know, oh, yeah, it's just the one that's got the most screaming on it, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that as much, but I just find that I feel like they could have continued with the Embrace sound and added more melody to it. I don't really understand what the mindset was behind such a drastic change. And that's okay because, you know, ultimately I wasn't the one in the practice space making those decisions, you know. I'm just a listener, you know.
Was it, and either this was an interview or something that we read, but wasn't it the lead singer of Skillet who's, when they asked him, why did you change your sound every album? The answer was, well, it's ministry. We want to appeal to as many people as possible. Because if you go to a Skillet show, you get pretty much the entire scope of music genre that they encompass.
Right.
This doesn't feel like the same type of decision.
No, it doesn't. And I don't, you know, it's weird because, again, Embrace the Eternal was probably the most, quote, Christian album that they, like, overtly, I mean, there were references to that in the later records as well, but that was their most, like, quote, ministry, end quote, type of album. Which I could understand maybe them finding that unappealing a little bit as well, but with this, I don't think that it was honestly, like, I don't think there was any type of we're going to play this so that we can get more popular, because this big of a style change is probably like suicide for the band. I feel like Embrace was pretty well received, and this stuff, the Hold Your Breath and Narrow Scope, I mean, people hated these records. I mean, hated them. I mean, Buddy listened to it one time and was like, here, just take it. I don't want it. You know?
I look back on those albums that exist that people hate, that we listen to, and we're like, this is good.
Yeah.
Pulse Ultra comes to mind.
Yeah.
A lot of people hated that band, and then we listened to it like, dude, this is gold. And
yeah, it was good.
It's just came out at the wrong time and tried to appeal to the wrong people.
And, you know, Narrow Scope and Hold Your Breath were...
Were they playing catch-up here?
I'm not sure. They released these pretty quick after one another. Like one was like 2000, one was 2001, but they very quickly established this sound as their dominant sound. So I think maybe that had been a little bit of motivation. Like, okay, all the Embrace fans are gone, right? So hopefully we can carve out a fan base with this sound. And but again, it's hard to do that because, you know, let's say you like Narrow Scope of things. That record doesn't sound really a whole lot like Hold Your Breath. Hold Your Breath is more straightforward. It's a little more energetic. It's a little more poppy. Narrow Scope of Things is kind of this dark record with screaming on it, and you know, you can definitely tell it's the same band, but you go to Hold Your Breath, and it's not as big of a change from, you know, Embrace to Narrow Scope, but it is still a big change. And I feel like every album, it had the potential to lose fans, you know. And but I mean that is a testament to musicianship, though, in the sense of like we're doing what we want to do. It's never going to pay the bills, you know. It's never gonna break through. I don't think Embodiment really had the potential to break through, and that's sad because it has nothing to do with their musical ability.
So let me apply the Norma Jean scale to this.
How many scales do you have?
A lot of them. Is this the same thing as the Norma Jean fans that only listen to Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, and won't give Anti-Mother a chance?
You know, that's the whole thing, though, because Norma Jean kind of did it right? Like, Norma Jean kind of built us up to a record like the Anti-Mother. You know, you have Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, super heavy. You have Oh God, the Aftermath, super heavy, but with a little bit of melody. You get to Redeemer, which is still heavy, but a lot of melody. And then you get to Anti-Mother, which is kind of all melody. You know, and then they've since, you know, gone the opposite direction, is getting progressively heavier again. But they built it up. Embodiment was like, you bought this record? Well, you have no idea what you're in for. We know what you're not in for. It's not going to sound like the next record. It's not going to sound like the last record.
And the last record that they put out, Songs for the Living.
Yeah, Songs for the Living, again, a huge change. So whereas Hold Your Breath was, you know, more rock, you know, more straight ahead or whatever, the Songs for the Living is almost like more of your mainstream rock. You know, like I feel like people that like stuff like Deftones or whatever, like they would have liked, you know, Narrow Scope of Things. They would have probably liked Hold Your Breath, but Songs for the Living went in an even more like general rock direction. I don't really have a lot to compare it to either because, weirdly enough, I really enjoy Songs for the Living because it's so different than most, you know, the mostly metal that I listen to for the most part. So
it's one of those separate yourself entirely from the name of the band and just consume it for what it is.
Right, and that's kind of the habit I'd gotten into with Embodiment because, again, when they put out a new record, I couldn't go in thinking that I was going to be getting, you know, a similar product to what I'd gotten before.
This is the album I don't have. I've had some difficulty finding it. And I do not have Forgotten, which was the 2011 Out of the Blue EP that this band put out.
Well, that was not really Forgotten was literally just, I think, B-sides off of Songs for the Living. There wasn't any real. There wasn't really any new material.
Okay, so I'm not missing anything, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. So I mean,
okay.
You're not missing much. I mean, if you love Songs for the Living and you want more of that, then sure, Forgotten's your jam. But basically, Songs for the Living. Really, my wife actually liked this one a lot. She listened to it. I think more than I did, and
this is the part where the metalheads in the room joke about the fact that your wife likes this album more than you do.
Right. Well, this isn't a metal album. I'd be more disturbed if I'd be more disturbed if she liked the Horde album more than I did. But
what are you listening to, honey? Oh, it's this thing I found called Horde.
Children's programming. Yeah.
I love you.
Right. Yeah. I'd be a little worried. I'd be, what have you done with my wife? But Songs for the Living is very melodic. Again, the goal is not to be heavy. I mean, if you went into this expecting screaming, I'm so sorry, but it's not here. But again, that doesn't really bother me too much. I like the songs. I like the vocal melodies. I think Sean sings better even on this one than he did all the previous releases, and it's really smooth. It's really melodic. But again, like Joe said, it's not that there's anything wrong with it. There's no big glaring stamp on it that says, well, this sucks, or they're making this up, or this isn't good, or whatever. It's all completely rock solid. It's just not. It's not that notable in the sense of when I listen to it, I can't. It doesn't really stick with me for that long. It's just kind of like I listen to it, it's good, and then I just kind of move on from it.
Dan, Embodiment's coming to town. I'll pay my $10 and go see Embodiment. Sure,
why not? Yeah.
It's not like Embodiment's coming to town and I have to go see them. Unfortunately, these are not those kinds of songs.
Right, and I may have been that way with Embrace. But this Embodiment, no, I'm not. I'm probably not paying more than $10 to go see them. And again, it's not even that I have any problem with Embodiment. They haven't done anything wrong. Musically, it's just the idea that every single thing that they put out was just suicide. You start off super, super metal, like that is the wrong crowd to be playing to if you want to change your style immediately. Like for there to be that big of a change from, what we got on Embrace the Eternal and where we're at now. I mean, we're on a completely different planet now, and that's okay. The band unfortunately did break up pretty quickly after that. I don't think this record really. Again, it's one of those who are you guys playing to?
You're opening for
whoever
the local bands, at that
right?
point.
You're not. Yeah, I mean, sure, you're a signed act or whatever, but it's not. It's weird seeing the Tooth and Nail Solid State stuff in there. It's just bizarre. I don't know. Their association with Solid State and Tooth and Nail Records is it's a little weird. Especially when it sounds like that. But I don't know. My favorite album. I mean, I don't have to be too upfront about this, but I mean. Yeah, clearly it's Embrace, right? I that's my favorite Embodiment record, bar none. Did you have a favorite one, Joe?
I already showed my true colors and said that it was Hold Your Breath.
Hold Your Breath.
That was the first one I heard, and out of all of them, it's the one that I'll pull out the most. I wish I could say more about Embodiment as a band, as that group that you got to go seek out. Unfortunately, everything that they do that I enjoy, somebody else is doing better, and I would first point you in a different direction before I would make that turn to Embodiment.
Sure, I could see that.
And I'd be proud if it came on in the car or at work, even just sitting around here, and somebody said, "What band is this?" I'd be like, "This is Embodiment." And I guarantee you that person would have the same experience I did. They would look it up, they would listen to it, and they would say it's okay. Unfortunately, that's what it is. And that's okay because you're still higher up than a lot of groups that people try to spread around.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's nothing wrong or bad about him. I like Embodyment. I don't consider myself a fan, but yeah, it's just that I feel like as they went on, it just didn't really didn't gel, and I kind of understand why eventually, after trying as hard as they did, as passionately as they did, that they just had to kind of hang it up,
Right.
So I mean, I will say that if you're a huge fan of Embrace the Eternal style Embodiment, they did reform a few years later with that lineup, and they recorded under the name The Famine. They put out 2 records. The first Famine record actually has Chris McCadden, who's on Embrace the Eternal. He does the lead vocals on that one, and then he left. And then for their second record, they have a different vocalist who was, I believe, the bass player for the band. He's just stepped up and did the vocals, and sounds really good. So if you're a fan of that Embodiment, you can get that with The Famine.
Let's talk about the blog real quick, because you have been doing some writing this week. And it's been a while since Dan has done some writing. But you put up a full review of Anti-Melody by American Standards.
Yeah, that was fun.
You pulled out The Well-Intentioned Virus by Zayo, which we all know that Dan has been singing that praises for months.
Yeah, well, I listened to that. I listened to the vinyl on my new speakers, and it was really cool.
You do have a sweet new vinyl setup, so you're fully deployed. You're back. Dan has his vinyls again.
Right, yeah. So that stuff all sounds really good. And did one about lyrics, too, like a little opinion thing.
Yeah, why do lyrics matter, Dan?
Well, just they do. I think it really adds to the finished product. I think a lot of people like the music that they hear on a record, and they love all that stuff, but the reality is that, I think people just don't really care what the songs are about, and that bothers me because I always do care, and I don't know if it was just my Christian upbringing. And I think it started because I was always like looking to see what kind of lyrics bands had, and like growing up in a religious household, I kind of had to hide what I was listening to, from my parents or whatever. So like it was helpful to know like which songs to like skip or turn down and stuff before they came in the room. So I think that's where it started, but over time it really developed into a really deep appreciation for lyrics, and you can read more about it on the blog post.
So what's your album of the week then?
My album of the week, I've been listening to, honestly, dude, I've just been listening to Anti-Melody a lot. I mean, by American standards, it's a grower. So that's my album of the week again. I know I did it again. I know I did it a few weeks ago, but I just haven't really put it down.
For those people that continue to listen to the same albums over and over and over again, you are not alone. And if you are a fan, listen to Anti-Melody again. I'll say, keeping with the American standards, listen to Still Life.
It's a good one.
I've been listening to it every morning. This past week, it hasn't been mornings, but I have been listening to it at the start of almost every work shift, so listen to that. Talking about the blog, you can find everything we do at discussmetal.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Again, visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please, send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. This has been episode 18, and we will see you all next week.
Preacher of the